Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
As the legislature hurtles to the May 17th adjournment, the chairs of the Education and Veterans Committees describe their budget priorities. Plus, the Senate votes on voter ID and lawmakers fight to save electronic poll tabs. Stay tuned for this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. Nearly half of Minnesota's budget is devoted to educating the state's youth. Senator Roger Chamberlain, chair of the Senate's E12 Education Committee, would like to see a greater focus on literacy and mental health and more options for parents and kids. You moved from chairing the Tax Committee to chairing the E12 Education Committee this session, and you've said that your approach is to focus on kids and families rather than systems. What do you mean?
Well, I think we all understand systems. You know, the pure definition of a system is a number of parts or things in a complex, forming a complex whole, unitary whole. For example, the public education system is a combination of transportation, buildings, educators, politicians, bureaucrats, and all the other things that go into educating a child. Well, that's a system. The public education system is a system. I chose, and we believe, many parents believe, that we should be funding the kids and the parents. Put the money in their hands, and then they will decide who to fund and what is best for their kids. So giving it to the parents, the kids, instead of to this system that by their own definition has been failing kids for 30, 40 years now.
Well, so I'm actually going to go a little bit out of order. I'm going to jump ahead because this is to that point. The Senate bill provides for the creation of education savings accounts, or ESAs, which critics say will siphon money away from public education in favor of private education. You've said that it empowers parents and that it will improve outcomes for students of color in particular. Can you explain how this program would work?
Well, it's basically, it's very simple at its heart, and the core is we take money that's already allocated to the child. In Minnesota, the average the average dollar amount attached to a child general education revenue average is about $10,000, give or take. So essentially that money would be taken, instead of that money going to that school where that kid is at, that money would, if the child is pulled from that school and goes to a different school, then that money follows that child into another school, you know, private or public or charter. It's funding the kid. The money follows the kid and doesn't stay in the school system. So this way it opens up to private schools as well. I like to think of it, and many people think of it as it's all public education, charters, government schools, magnet schools, homeschooling, IB schools. It's all public education. Where they get that education really doesn't matter, as long as they're getting what they need, reading, writing, and all those things that are going to make them great citizens, great people, and set them up for success and happiness and prosperity later.
Now, you mentioned reading, and goes into an account that follows the student. And yes. So can it also be used for other things besides tuition?
Yeah, I mean, anything that does is attached to education, books and materials, and cap on the amount of electronics, right? You buy a computer and some stuff like that. But yeah, anything that would go into helping that kid get a complete education.
So you mentioned reading, and you have long advocated for helping students with dyslexia. This education bill would expand the use of reading and spelling training program, specific reading and spelling training program for teachers called LETRS, Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling, LETRS. A number of news stories over the past several years have talked about nationally how the U.S. is not doing a good job of teaching kids how to read, and reading is a predictor of academic success. How would this particular program help, and do you expect to see significant progress in reading outcomes?
First, I'll answer the second question first. Absolutely. The large-scale operation where they've shown success is Mississippi. Now, Mississippi did a few other things that Minnesota had already done, but Mississippi went to the LETRS program to ensure that all their educators, all their teachers had the basic understanding how the science of reading works and get away from whole language. So yes, it can be successful. Mississippi, by the way, leads Minnesota and is ahead of Minnesota in scores overall, and particularly for children of color, African American children, Hispanic children. They are ahead of Minnesota in those categories, and they implemented letters and many other changes. So for years, we were, secondly, the idea was whole language, whole language, that it's a kind of an unusual way to teach learning, teach reading. Reading has to be taught. And that is the pure science. It's been known for decades and decades, almost 100 years. You have to teach reading. Letters teaches reading in the way it has to be taught. Phonic-based, evidence-based, scientific, period. And then thirdly, educators in Minnesota that have used it are incredibly happy. I know they've been using it in Minnetonka for a while and different places throughout the state. And the educators that come back said, it is great. They are having great success, and they are ecstatic. So the agreement to do this was reached about 2 years ago, COVID, and then by educators, the union, parents, the school board, the department, all agree. So this will help. There are other components to it, but it is what they need. They need to know how to teach learning. And it's not the educator's fault, right? I said it before. This is a system that was taught by higher ed for years. And the phonics, he was left out of it. So but getting back to basics, it's not educators' fault. So we're the product of the culture at the time, changing it, getting back to where we need to go, catch up, and get the kids where they need to be.
There is bipartisan agreement that having more teachers of color in the classroom will improve outcomes for the growing population of students of color. How do you propose to entice more people of diverse backgrounds to begin careers as educators?
Well, there's several pieces, and the governor and the House, and we agree on many of those pieces, most of them. First, you got to really focus the efforts on finding these candidates, and it starts early, right? The whole spectrum. You start early in elementary school, you get them in high school, you say, hey, here's a great career path. We need you. Why don't you come over here? So the whole process, right, from beginning to end. So first you get the kids involved. That's longer term. Secondly, you put money behind it, give more money to the districts to help develop and recruit those educators. Thirdly, the governor has his marketing plan to go out and help advertise this. And another component is bonuses, hiring bonuses to teachers from around the country to get them to come to this cold state to teach and help our kids out. So it's a package of things, giving some local control, bonuses, mentoring. And one thing we want and believe is important is getting rid of this LIFO thing, and also leaving the teacher licensing system alone. So those are two areas we will disagree on, LIFO and teacher licensing, but there's a package of things. We agree mostly with the governor and the House. It's been a problem for years. It was ignored, and frankly, it's kind of ridiculous for at this point, but we're going to fix it.
And LIFO being last in, first out in terms of the hiring and laying off of teachers. Mental health of young people concerns about the mental health of young people was common before the pandemic. You and I have spoken more than once about the problem of social media and mental health. Since COVID, mental health is even of greater concern. What have you proposed to improve students' mental health?
Couple things. One, it's a priority for us. The quick high-level thing is we're going to fund an organization, a non-government organization, a nonprofit, to spearhead this operation to build awareness, education, training of digital well-being, social media, screen time stuff. Live more, screen less would be the department would have oversight over them, but they would be charged with reaching out to schools, building awareness, creating partnerships, and educating people and training teachers and others and kids how to deal with this menace, which is social media and too much screen time. technology is good, but it's been abused, and it's doing great damage and harm to our kids. Secondly, of course, the COVID compounded those mental health problems, and the suicide rate among youth has skyrocketed in the last year. And prior to that was going up as well because of this media stuff tied to it. The other pieces are suicide prevention training for educators, increased use of safe school money for mental health and counselors and things of that sort. Telehealth is out there. So building an entire structure for support. First, we have to identify the problem, attack it, and destroy it. And that is getting kids back in school, number one. Number two, attacking and destroying the menace that is social media and the pain and suffering it's caused our kids. So we get to those, we're going to go a long way of getting back to a normal range of mental health for our kids. So a number of things.
Senator Roger Chamberlain, I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Been a pleasure. You have a blessed day, Shannon.
This week, the Senate voted along party lines to require that voters show a current photo ID in order to register to vote and to vote.
First, voter ID detects and prevents voter fraud and does so by providing election judges with the proof the person proposing to cast a vote is in fact the person that they say they are. Next, voter ID provides for provisional ballots for those who do not have the necessary government-issued identification card when casting their ballot. Provisional ballots are a positive voter protection measure as recognized by 46 states that have adopted provisional ballots. Number 3, voter identification moves Minnesota into the 21st century by modernizing our system with tools like digital photography, the ease of transferring information, and the ease of acquiring necessary documents. Finally, voter ID serves to safeguard voter confidence. Public confidence in the integrity of our electoral process encourages citizens' participation in our democratic process.
The myth of voter fraud and the resulting push of restrictive legislative proposals is unacceptable. We should be doing work to solve actual problems instead of imposing policies that place deliberate barriers in place of people exercising their right to vote.
On its surface, voter ID sounds fair. I completely concede that. On its surface, it makes sense. It really does. But in terms of its actual practical consequences, it is deeply anti-democratic.
All eligible voters to be able to vote, we want their votes counted. This bill does that. It makes it easier for same-day voting and registration in ballots through provisional ballots. It won't turn anybody away at the polls. It pays for people to get the IDs. It will help reimburse for documents. If you don't have the documents, you just sign an affidavit and you get in. So, members, this makes it easier for more people to vote and that they will have their vote count.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, it's a work in progress. Voting is a work in progress. The Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address, which, by the way, was shorter than my speech, he ends with, government of the people, by the people, and for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
We have a very difficult and sometimes violent history in our country over the sacred right to vote because it enshrines in the people the power to set our course. And that's why today's discussion is so disturbing.
I would suggest to you that along with the right to cast that vote comes a certain amount of personal responsibility. Not one person has brought up that issue on the floor today. Personal responsibility. If you want to exercise your right to vote, you have to affirmatively do something in order to vote.
If you want to drive, you have to have a driver's license. If you want to go buy a bottle of wine, you have to have a driver's license or tobacco. If you're applying for Medicaid or Medicare, you have to have a driver's license. If you want to go hunting or fishing, you have to present a driver's license. Most business transactions, like a bank loan, you have to have a driver's license. If you have to take professional testing for just about anything, you have to have a driver's license. If you're going to apply for college, they want to see your driver's license. When you fill out a work form, you want to work someplace, they're going to ask for your driver's license. VA benefits, show me your driver's license. If you want to get a passport, show me your driver's license. And if you don't have a passport, you're going to travel by plane, show me your driver's license. Now, they do make some accommodations in some of those situations, but so does this bill for voting and presenting your driver's license.
Improving services for Minnesota's veterans, from stable housing and skills training to mental health support, is one of the aims of the Senate's budget for Veterans and Military Affairs. I spoke with the chair of that committee, Senator Andrew Lang, this week. You are new to the role of chairman. This legislative session is your first as the chair of Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. You've done well enough that Minority Leader Susan Kent praised your leadership on the Senate floor. And I'm curious, does being a major in the Minnesota National Guard provide a unique perspective for this work?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Shannon. I think so. I think having, and this is probably something that most military service members would say, that if you haven't worn the uniform, you haven't gone through, even something like basic training or a service overseas, you probably just don't quite get it. A lot of people have family members that have served, and they have a unique perspective as well. But yeah, having that experience, I think, is important. So when you start making decisions, whether it's behind a gavel or on a committee bench, it's, I think it's entirely important. That's why we oftentimes pick teachers to lead the education committee, or lawyers on judiciary, or CPAs on the tax committee. I think it's important that they have that experience. So yeah, and as far as Susan Kent's complimentary remarks, I appreciate them. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the bill. The Veterans Omnibus Bill was rolled into the State Government and Elections Omnibus Bill. Your proposal spends $8 million to support veterans in a number of ways, making sure that they're cared for, as you said, from when they return from service until their golden years. What are some of the efforts that would be funded? Well, when they return to service, so we've worked on a couple of real. This is something where the military and vets area has not. We've seen ourselves suffer, and it's in veteran suicide and PTSD and other issues where the department's really taking a close look on that, and hopefully leading the way on how we're going to try to accomplish stopping those veteran suicide. I think that's important to mention. We talked about jobs and training in GI Bill for those veterans that are in the ages that can go back to school, learn a new trade if they need to, or possibly increase upon some of the education that they have already. So, and then golden years, what I meant by that was we've funded 3 new veterans homes, and we have a substantial veterans home system as it stands right now. But as we move forward, how can we increase that? How can we make that better? And I think honestly, Senator Newton and myself, as the DFL lead in the Senate Veterans Committee, he doesn't like the outstate homes, but I said that's fine. We'll get the outstate homes done, and then we're going to come back to Minneapolis and work on the homes there, or the beds there. So I've made that commitment to him. But yeah, there's definitely this is my 5th year in the Senate, and this is probably the most money we've thrown at veterans issues for since I've been here, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So. Well, so you mentioned, well, one thing you didn't mention actually is homelessness, and you did mention it on the floor. How big of a problem is homelessness among veterans, and what is proposed to help?
Well, so we have worked with the department, the housing department, and both military and Veterans Affairs committee agencies, and we put some money. I think it was $1.5 million towards ending that veterans homelessness, and this is something where Commissioner Ho and the governor, and I think rightfully so, said they can statistically eliminate veterans homelessness, and I think we have about 200 and just under 300 people that are veterans and homeless. What this program will do is not only get them off the streets, but the intent is to keep them off the streets. How do we get them job trained? How do we get them housing secure? And hopefully if it works out right, we can have some sort of a path lane for other programs throughout the state to follow. So as we go forward, we can say, well, this is how the vets did it with 300, individuals. Can you do the same program with others? So, we're going to give it a whirl.
Now, one thing that you did mention was the problem of suicide among military members, and you also mentioned that you've personally experienced this. I assume you know people who have taken their own life. There's money for recognizing veteran suicide prevention and awareness, having a day set aside for that, but there's also some other stuff. Can you talk about that?
So it's all mental, a lot of mental health stuff. There is, this is, like I said, this is a big initiative of the agency, and I've supported that as much as I possibly can. And I think you can see it it's the only area that I said, yep, throw every dollar that they ask for towards it. I think it's important. Not that I don't think that homelessness is, I just wanted this to be the #1 target of the Senate committee. As we move forward, yeah, there's, in my personal experience, that this is something where it isn't, I think we've talked about the numbers and how many numbers can we affect. And this is maybe something where just that one single person that we can stop from doing something rash is a good thing. And yeah, that's, in my personal life, when you come back from deployment, you're not quite ready. And the military and the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon and all these groups that have worked really hard to try to fix that, to try and soften the blow. We have 90 days of reintegration training or reintegration things with our friends and family as we come back into the States, and they're trying to figure out what works. And and I think it's making effect. But there are a few people that I've known, and even personally, I wasn't exactly the happiest person when I came back from either deployment, and you're kind of just in a different state of mind. So I think it's important that we took a good look at that and try to try to bring our boys and girls back from a tough assignment, and get them as what they were when they left. So it's important, and this is a step in the right direction.
Now, related to that is the problem that stems from PTSD or some other service-related trauma, veterans coming back and getting negatively interacting with law enforcement. There is an expansion of the Veterans Restorative Justice Act to provide that path to rehabilitation. How will this work? How many people will it affect?
Well, again, speaking from a personal standpoint, that's when I know, dozens or more than dozens of people that have returned from overseas and, gotten the DUI, gotten this, another infraction of some other sort. And partially, is it due to PTSD? Is it due to, not being able to handle emotion, not being able to handle a stressful situation? And I truly believe that yes, it has a lot to do with it, because those guys and gals just went through something that, less than 1% of the population is going to experience. And even a smaller portion of those folks that were deployed actually, served in combat roles. So it is a small number of people we're talking about, but I know some of them. I know some of them personally. What I would say is the Veterans Restorative Justice Act is both based on some of the veterans courts that the state has had operating for years, and it probably goes a little bit further. And there's two different versions of it now. The Senate and the House both have a version. in the Senate, we have carried the House version, and the House has portions of what the Senate is carrying now. I think at the end of conference committee, and we just started yesterday, and again, in a few minutes here, we're going to kick off our second day of conference. We will have a bill that will do what we want it to do. That is, providing a court a little bit of a path to allow some of these vets that may have extenuating circumstances to say, you know what, we're going to give you this chance to get your life back in sync, and you're not going to be paying for it for the rest of your life. We're going to allow you to have a good experience here and hopefully clean your record up. So,
Senator Andrew Lang, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Shannon.
Republican lawmakers pushed back against a provision that would put an end to electronic pull tabs in their current form in September of next year.
We're here today to bring attention to the House File 2366 that was shoved into the Commerce Omnibus bill after deadlines, and the potential harm that it will bring to all of our local charities who use charitable gambling as a revenue source.
Our locally family-owned bars and restaurants have had a really, really rough year. And taking away their electronic pull tabs is like kicking them when they're down. $33 million goes back out into the community. That pays for underprivileged kids who can't afford youth sports. It pays for their fees, it pays for their equipment. It goes to the local food shelves. It goes to police and fire organizations, lake conservation associations, field trip money for kids who can't afford it, Beds for North in Minneapolis, high school hockey associations, both boys and girls, and the list goes on and on.
I just want to remind you how e-pull tabs came to be to begin with. So way back when the stadium was being built, this was part of the negotiation, e-pull tabs. Our locals had paper pull tabs. They were happy with it. People liked it. They were doing well. This got put on them. Then they struggled and worked really hard through that time. They took care of that. They're the ones that made it now successful today. And now that they've made it successful, now they want to take it away from them.
We're recognized as a leader in day services in the state of Minnesota. And these funds are a reason for it, because we use them to enhance the services that are paid by Medicaid dollars.
When I brought the electronic pull tabs into our post in November of 16, it was an instant hit because they couldn't drive that far, or their wife would bring them to the American Legion. They could sit, they could have a beer, have a drink, play electronic pull tabs, play regular pull tabs. It was a revenue for us that, because we give all of our money away.
We keep being told as an industry that it's no fault of the bar owner, no fault of the charity, that these games are deemed to be illegal come September 6th of 2022. If it's no fault of our own, then why are we being penalized for it?
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.